and thank you for joining us for the Voice of the People podcast here on kxnet.com. I'm Nicholas Kwalik, and today we're once again focusing on the race for Congress. Joining me now is one of the candidates for the sole congressional seat here in North Dakota. That's Public Service Commissioner Julie Fedorchak. Commissioner, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate the invitation.
So how's the campaign going so far?
Campaign is going great. We've had a really positive couple of weeks in the last week being exceptional. We have really strong momentum. We are up in the polls. Our fundraising has been strong. When I'm out and about in the state, which I'm doing a lot of talking to North Dakota voters, business owners, community leaders, grassroots organizers throughout the state, I'm hearing really positive things. They're responding to my 30 years of involvement in North Dakota in both business and the private sector and public service, and really kind of appreciating my positive, no nonsense to work approach to my current service and to what I want to bring to Congress.
You transitioned very well, Commissioner. I was just going to ask you, tell us a little about yourself as far as what you've done up until this point.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'm a fourth generation North Dakotan. I was born in Williston. I'm the youngest of 8 kids. I was born in Williston, lived there for about 5 years. And then my family moved to Fargo. I lived in Fargo until 9th grade, and all my siblings had graduated from high school at that point. I was the last one at home. Then my parents moved to Bismarck, and I moved there with them, obviously, and I graduated from Century High School in 1986. After that, I headed up to the University of North Dakota and got my degree in journalism there in 1990. I spent a few years working in communications and lived out in DC. And then Governor Schaefer was elected to governor, and he recruited me back to North Dakota to be his communications director. That's when I discovered my passion for public service and public policy, and really came to appreciate the really and very important role the government has in people's lives. That's something that my parents instilled in me as a kid and always talked about. You should be involved in government, be involved in politics because it really matters. And I came to really appreciate the truth of what they had taught me when I worked for Ed Schaefer in his office. After that time, I decided I wanted to step out of government, work in the private sector for a while. I had gotten married. My husband and I wanted to start a family, which we did. And so I had my own business, my own communications business for 10 years. Had 3 kids. They got all into school. And then when they got back, when they all 3 were in school, I thought, you know what? I might be ready for public service again. I kind of missed it. I missed the policy. I missed being involved in things that I felt like really mattered to the citizens of our communities and our state. And so I raised my hand and to then Senator Hoeven, when he first got elected, and said I'd be interested in getting back in. And they said, great. I got hired to be on his state team. I was the state director there for a year and a half. And then there was an opening at the Public Service Commission. I raised my hand again and thought, I've been working for others for a while. I should try to be an elected official myself and serve the citizens of the state. So I did get appointed by Governor Dalrymple. And then I've since been elected 3 times statewide by the citizens of North Dakota to serve as a public service commissioner. In my role there, I've really taken my kind of no-nonsense, common sense approach to governing, really trying to streamline our agency, cut red tape, make sure that we're being very responsible for our dollars and providing really great services to citizens. I've regulated based on the law that is provided by the legislators, and have helped permit $15 billion worth of energy infrastructure in the state of North Dakota that's out there serving citizens to this day, serving our energy sector, and really helping to support that critical industry in North Dakota in a way that is has the least impact to the citizens of our state, taking trucks off road, making things less noisy, reducing pollution, all of that sort of thing. That's what good energy infrastructure does. So I've been involved in that, have been a leader in keeping our utility rates low in North Dakota. We have some of the highest rates of reliability in our services, and we have the lowest utility rates in the nation. So really proud of that, and that's been sort of a single-minded approach by myself and my colleagues in working in regulating our utilities. And then finally pushing back on the Biden and the Obama administration and their efforts to shut down, in some cases, the Dakota Access Pipeline, or in other cases, trying to hamper our oil and gas industries, our coal industries, shut them down, make it more expensive, more difficult to produce these really important energy resources that we have in North Dakota, that our state needs, that our country needs. So I've been fighting those fights as well. And then I'm really involved nationally. I'm a national president of our utility regulators organization. And I have been a leader of the regional effort on the MISO grid operator who runs the grid, the electric grid and power grid in North Dakota and 15 states. I've been a leader in that organization and working hard on the energy market side of things to make sure that our baseload energy resources have a fair shot and are paid for the really reliable services that they provide. So it's been a very fascinating experience being involved on the Public Service Commission through the very difficult, challenging days of the Bakken oil boom, and really feeling like I've been able to hone in on my common sense, no nonsense approach of problem solving and getting things done and coming towards sensible solutions based on facts.
So tell us, how did you decide to run for Congress now?
Really, it's kind of an outstretch of my engagement nationally in some of those organizations I mentioned, both our national utility organization, of which I'm president, and our regional involvement with electric grids, and seeing the dangerous course that our country is on as it relates to energy policy. I have a lot of expertise and experience. I'm known nationally as a voice for affordable, reliable power and energy policies that support that. And just recognizing that in Congress and in Washington, we don't have enough people who truly understand how the energy systems in our country work. And we need those credible voices to be advocating for policies that support smart, sound energy development. And why that's so important is because energy is the basis of our society today. And our citizens, you and I, we depend on it from the very minute we wake up. Even while we're sleeping, we're depending on reliable, affordable energy to power our homes and keep our communities safe, power our businesses. Those resources are at risk based on and because of the policies coming out of Washington. And we need folks who can be there and fight in a credible basis on day one for our state. So that was really the biggest push for me, was knowing like there's an opening. We need another voice for North Dakota, filling back for Kelly Armstrong, who has been that strong voice for energy. We need another person in there who can advocate for one of our state's largest industries. It supports our state's largest industry, agriculture. So the two work hand in hand. And we need somebody who's strong and proven to be able to work with those industries, to be able to fight effectively for them in a convincing way, who can work with others, build relationships, and really get things done for the advancement of those really important industries for our state itself, for citizens in North Dakota, for families, and for really, quite honestly, for all Americans, because we should be energy independent and we should be developing and selling our energy resources to our allies throughout the world for to reduce international conflicts as well and improve peace throughout the world. So energy policy is kind of a thread that's runs through my campaign. I'm also really concerned about just the overall direction of the country and what's happened under the Biden administration. Our borders are completely unsecure. We're letting in millions of illegal immigrants every year, 8 million since Biden has been president. We have got to secure our borders. We have to start having some sensible approach to immigration policy, but it all starts with securing our borders. And I'm hearing that every day from citizens across the state. We need to get that done. And so from day one, I'll be pressuring others in DC to get to work on that and getting solutions on the borders. And the budget is the other big issue that I'm concerned about. $34 trillion in debt. We're given false choices right now that we can't have, investments in our military, that we can't have investments in safe communities and have a budget that is balanced and under control. And we can, and we will. And that's something I'm going to work really hard on as well.
Speaking of the country, you're the first candidate I've spoken to since the former president has been convicted of a felony, and you are endorsed by former President Trump. So how does that either help or hinder your campaign?
So I'm very honored to be endorsed by President Trump. I think Americans and North Dakotans, a vast majority of North Dakotans, and I think we will see a large majority of Americans support him for president and believe that he's the kind of strong, determined leader who can push back on these out of control, completely unaccountable federal bureaucrats that are doing things like ignoring our laws and not enforcing them and allowing illegal immigrants across into our country and in the millions, who's allowing runaway agencies like the EPA to damage, threaten, and even try to shut down some of our most important energy resources in this country. And so President Trump is the leader who's going to work on those issues and get them done. And a vast majority of citizens in our state support him. And I think they also believe that the trial that resulted in his conviction was a fraud. There's multiple examples from the very beginning, elevating these kind of business records to a felony level, from that all the way into who the judge was and how it all evolved. I think it has helped really, unfortunately, create this distrust and disbelief in the justice of our justice system. And that's another issue that I'm going to be working with President Trump to help correct if I'm elected by the citizens of North Dakota to represent them in Congress.
You mentioned voices. Of course, you made your voice heard during the NDGOP convention. Of course, there were many other voices also heard. Commissioner, what happened during the convention?
I went there with the full intent and excited to try to win the endorsement of the party that I have served and worked for 30 plus years. I've been to almost every convention, I think every convention since the 1990s, advocating for, conservative Republican solutions to our citizens' government and biggest challenges, and supporting conservative Republican candidates. So I was excited to go there and work to earn the endorsement of my Republicans throughout the state. Unfortunately, Rick Becker attended with different intentions, even though he said that he was going there and understood the rules and understood that he broke the rules of the party by becoming an independent and challenging the Republican candidate for Senate, Senator Hoeven, in the previous election. He came saying that he was going to just be a delegate, and that was that, and he understood the rules he broke. And as we saw, he went a different path, and he orchestrated an effort to have people spoil the ballots. His own text message was sent around to delegates at the convention, encouraging them to spoil their ballots. So when that all evolved, and there was a big show during the convention that was just intended to help Rick Becker, I guess, feel good about himself and stroke his ego. I don't know how else to describe it, because it was pointless. It didn't result in him being elected, because he couldn't be elected, because he broke the rules of the party, knowingly broke the rules of the party. People actually, even before he did that, warned him about what the rules were, and he still knowingly went ahead and did it. So he created this show and I guess made himself feel good. that people were there to support him. But those ballots didn't count, and it forced everyone who was participating in the convention to sit there for another hour. Again, pointless, just an effort to get attention. Another hour to go through another ballot. In the second ballot, 200 people left between the first and second ballot for the House race because they were disgusted with what had just happened. And it was a waste of their time. And this was the very last item on the agenda for the convention. So people were already there a couple hours later than they had planned to be. And so it was really unfortunate. So there's a second ballot that was required after the second ballot, and 200 people had left. We still didn't have, neither myself nor Alex had the number of votes needed to get the majority, 50% plus one of the delegates. And so I decided, people had been through enough. Rick had made his point. He had gotten his attention. And it was just dragging out too long. And I thought, you know what, enough is enough. I'm going to just go to the podium, say that I'm going to concede to Alex, who had 5 more votes than me at that time, avoid having to go through a whole other balloting process, which would have taken another hour or more, and let people go home. And I knew I was going to go to the primary anyway, and so I just decided to cut it off there and just go to the primary and move ahead and try to be above board and provide some leadership that I feel the citizens of our state and the delegates to that convention deserved at that point, somebody being adult enough to say, enough is enough, this is pointless, let's move on.
Now, I did speak with Dr. Becker the last episode of the Voice of the People podcast, and we had touched on the cameo video he had made where he had media personality Dylan Mulvaney talk, and basically with the understanding that you were actually going to head to the DC Zoo to work with rhinos, while at the same time make it sound as though you were just pushing for green energy. What did you think when you saw that video?
Again, I was disappointed, and I really don't like to spend a lot of time talking about either one of these incidents. I think that they reflect poorly on somebody who's seeking one of the highest offices in North Dakota, seeking to go to Washington to represent our state and tackle the very serious matters that our citizens are concerned about. And I think it's a reflection of what kind of leadership you're going to get from Rick Becker when he goes there, if he's elected. These are the antics he likes. He's more about show. He's more about attention. He likes that. He craves it. He proved that in the legislature and his experience there. And I think that's why 55 of his colleagues in the legislature have endorsed me. Again, it's just more of an example of his approach and his style, which I think is contrary to what we need. We need serious-minded people who want to get to DC and govern and work on solving the problems of our country. And that's exactly why I'm in this race.
And I'll ask you along the similar lines the question I asked him. There's no secret, there's been a lot of divisive politics in the country for the last couple of years now. It's either if you don't like what I think, then you're just wrong, as opposed to agreeing to disagree. So to what extent, Commissioner, do you think it's your responsibility to end some of this very strong divisiveness in some cases?
I hope to be a really strong and powerful force for positive change in that regard in DC. I mean, obviously, it's a political system, so you have to work within that. And I'm going to be working hard with the Republican caucus. Within that, though, there's been so much infighting within the Republican caucus that has been so devastating. I want to be a unifying voice in that caucus. I think we have a lot more in common than we have in that is different. And so I'm going to work hard to be a unifying voice, to be a strong, positive voice for the conservative principles that we know are the lasting solutions to some of our country's biggest problems. That's been my record on the Public Service Commission. I roll up my sleeves, I get to work, I treat people with respect, I'm open, transparent. That's the kind of relationships I develop and work well within, and I will do that. I will continue that same approach in Washington, D.C. with my Republican colleagues there, and working across the aisle on folks who want to work on important policies like energy and agriculture. We need bipartisan solutions to these big challenges in order to make them lasting for the American people.
If you get past the primary and you get past the election and you do get a chance to roll up your sleeves in DC,
Mm.
what do you think would be your top priorities?
So, and Nicholas, whether somebody is been like 23 years old or 83 years old, when I've been traveling around North Dakota, what I am hearing the biggest concerns about is the borders. So I know on day one, I'm going to be bringing that message to Washington, saying to colleagues in DC, we need to get to work on this. I'm going to be pressuring folks in DC to get to work on real solutions, shutting down the border, and real solutions to those issues on day one. Beyond that, you heard my passion for energy. We have to continue pushing on the energy policy side of things. Our nation is at real risk of not having enough energy to meet our demand. We know that today, that's the issue today. So I'm going to be working to develop the coalitions and the Republican caucus to really get movement and put pressure on the EPA and those other regulatory agencies that have some very onerous and potentially devastating rules in place to pull those back and have a sensible and safe direction on our energy policy coming out of Washington. So those would be among my top priorities.
And of course, we have the northern border here as well in North Dakota. So when you get, presuming you get a elected position, when you get to DC, what would you like to focus on with incoming leadership, namely the office of the governor?
I look forward to working with Kelly, and I think there'll be if he's elected, he's got a sizable lead right now in the Republican primary. So I think that's the assumption I'm making at this point, that he'll win the primary and go on to win in the general election in November. I have a great working relationship with Kelly. I think we're going to have a seamless transition. If I'm elected to the House, he'll help me make that a seamless transition. And I'm going to be working with him arm in arm in his efforts as governor. I think we'll work a lot together on energy policy because he shares my concerns, and we've already worked quite a lot together on energy policy in my role as a state public service commissioner. He's recognized my expertise on these issues and elevated me among circles in Washington to share my observations and experiences and understanding of what's going on. So we'll work together a lot on issues related to EPA, the energy sector, agriculture, ag policy, immigration reform, so many issues that there's a federal state nexus. We'll have a strong ties and strong working relationship back and forth.
And what are your plans if you don't get past the primary or the election?
Well, I'm fortunate. I'm in a job right now that I love, and I feel like I'm having an impact in this job today, both here in North Dakota and nationally, because I am president of our national organization. So I'll continue carrying that mantle that I've been carrying and bringing throughout the country of the need for reliable, affordable energy to power our nation, to keep our communities safe, to help reduce inflation and the costs that people are paying for everything from gas to groceries. And so I will continue in that role and making as much of a difference as I can for North Dakotans in their energy bills, for our energy industry, and for our nation as a whole as it relates to energy policy.
Do you think if that were the case, would you give it another go next time around?
Well, I have 4 years left, so I'm really only 2 years into this term. So it's too early to say what my next step would be.
Okay. And what would you say to voters who haven't made a decision yet, or perhaps voters that may have belonged to one party and maybe thinking about switching to another party? How do you sort of get them on board to what you stand for?
Absolutely. Well, I think people are hungry for leaders who are authentic, who are honest and open and transparent, who bring a governing mindset to Washington and really want to get out there and get things done, who want to serve them and not serve themselves. I don't want this job as a title. I want this job for the job. I want to do this job. And so I think for citizens who are still undecided, I would encourage them to look at those who are already on my team. That includes President Trump. That includes every statewide elected official in North Dakota today, from Drew Wrigley to Michael Howe, who's the Secretary of State, to John Gottfried, our insurance commissioner, and Doug Goring, our ag commissioner. I've got 55 state legislators. I've got Governor Doug Burgum, Senator Hoeven. I've got all the former state governors on my team. And I've got all of the state's energy workers, whether it's from the oil and gas side or the coal side, so thousands of workers. And in addition, I have, I think, about 1,200 donors. A vast majority of those folks are North Dakotans. So I feel like people have worked with me. They know who I am. They've seen my work. They know I'm just not saying that I will be a common sense, a solutions-oriented person, but they can look at my record on the Public Service Commission and see that I am. And that's the same approach I'm going to take to Washington. I see this, I will be your representative. That means I will work with you, and I will work with our industries, and I will bring our voices forward to Washington and try to be the best voice for our issues in DC that I can possibly be, and being a very strong ambassador and advocate, again, for the conservative solutions that we know are the answers to our country's biggest problems. So I would encourage them to come to my website, julie4nd.com. Check out some of my information there. And more than anything, I would encourage you to vote for Julie Fedorchak on June 11th.
Okay, well, Commissioner Fedorchak, thanks so much for taking the time. I know this is going to air actually the day before the primary, so I know you're going to have some busy days ahead of that. But we will check in with you on primary night and see how everything goes. So thanks again for all the time today, and thank you for watching the Voice of the People podcast here on kxnet.com. We'll be back soon with more on the questions and answers affecting you, because remember, it's your voice that matters, the voice of the people.